Legend whispers through the trees of the Amazon of a city covered in gold, not just a treasure, but a kingdom, a lost world, El Dorado. For centuries, explorers have hunted for it and vanished. Nations have spent fortunes chasing it, and still, no one has returned with proof. But what if it wasn't just a myth? What if El Dorado did exist, not as a city of gold, but as something far more powerful? This is the story of the man who believed he had found it, and the mystery that still haunts the jungle today. In 1923, a quiet, gray-haired man walked into the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., holding a notebook and a dream. His name was Elias Monroe, an American cartographer and former WWI intelligence officer. To the public, he was just another veteran with jungle fever. But to those who knew him, Elias had become obsessed with one thing: finding the lost city of El Dorado. He believed he had the proof, not from a Spanish conquistador, not from hearsay, but from a map unlike any ever seen before. The map, drawn in faded ink on parchment, showed a valley deep in the Colombian Amazon, with a spiral city at its center. Around it, symbols for gold, water, and something no one could translate. Elias claimed it was handed to him by a dying monk in a mission hospital outside Bogota. The monk had found it hidden in the floorboards of an abandoned Jesuit chapel, buried with the remains of an unknown explorer. To Elias, it was more than coincidence. "This is no myth," he wrote. "This is a lost civilization, and I will find it, even if it kills me." To understand why this map mattered, you have to understand what El Dorado really was. The legend didn't begin with a city. It began with a man. In the early 1500s, Spanish invaders heard whispers from the natives of a chief, a golden man, covered head to toe in gold dust, who bathed in a sacred lake. He was called El Hombre Dorado, the gilded man. Each morning, they said, he would step into a canoe, paddle to the center of Lake Guatavita, and offer gold and emeralds to the gods below. Soon, the story evolved. The man became a city. The city became an empire. And then, it vanished. By the 1600s, hundreds of men had died trying to find it. Some disappeared in the jungle. Others were betrayed, killed, or driven mad by fever. But still, the legend grew. And Elias Monroe? He believed he had solved the riddle. In the winter of 1924, Elias recruited two men to join him on his quest: James Walker, a survivalist and botanist from Oregon, and Luis Herrera, a Colombian tracker whose ancestors had lived in the jungle for centuries. Elias promised them fame, discovery, and possibly riches. "It's not gold I'm after," Elias told them. "It's the truth." On March 5, 1925, the three men boarded a steamship from Miami to Cartagena, carrying rifles, rations, surveying tools, and the original map sealed in a metal case. They were never seen again for decades. Their story was forgotten, filed away as another failed expedition, another explorer lost to the jungle, until nearly a century later, something resurfaced. In 2019, during an environmental mapping survey of the Colombian Amazon, a drone picked up something unnatural in the middle of uncharted jungle, a spiral-shaped depression in the ground, nearly a mile wide, with stone fragments arranged in near-perfect geometry. It was identical to Elias Monroe's map. Archaeologists were baffled. Satellite imagery revealed what appeared to be roads, terraces, and defensive walls. And then, buried under a canopy of trees, they found what looked like a ceremonial platform. Had Elias Monroe been right? Had he found El Dorado and never lived to tell the tale? What happened to Elias and his companions in 1925? Did they make it to the site? Were they killed? Or did they uncover something so powerful it had to be buried again in the pages ahead? We'll follow their trail, step by step, clue by clue. And what we discover just might change what we thought. We knew about the Americas before Columbus, and the greatest treasure ever lost to time, the truth behind Elias Monroe's secret map, and the ancient priesthood that may have protected El Dorado for over 1,000 years. The forbidden map and the priesthood of shadows. What if the most dangerous thing in the Amazon wasn't the jaguar, or the fever, or the river itself, but the truth? Because as Elias Monroe's expedition faded into mystery, a darker story began to surface, a story older than El Dorado, older than the Spanish, maybe even older than the Inca. In the months after Elias disappeared, only one thing made it back to civilization: a scrap of his journal, half burned, damp and torn at the edges, found in 1931 by rubber workers deep in the Caqueta jungle. It had only a few legible lines. The spiral is real. Luis fears we are being watched. They call themselves the Keepers. Who were the Keepers? And why did Elias believe they were watching? To find answers, we go back to the map, the one Elias had guarded with his life. In 2021, a private collector from Virginia anonymously donated a rusted metal case to the Smithsonian. Inside, decayed jungle clothes, a machete engraved with the initials M, and the map, still intact, still sealed in wax, still carrying a secret. When experts examined it under infrared, they noticed something strange. Behind the inked riverways and topography, there were symbols, hidden glyphs, almost invisible to the eye, symbols not found in any known pre-Columbian language. Dr. Lenora Hayes, a linguistic archaeologist at Stanford, was called in to investigate. Her verdict shocked the academic community. These markings aren't cartographic, she said. They're ceremonial, protective, like a warning. She noticed something else, too. Every place where the symbols clustered, near the spiral valley, near the ruins, lined up with known reports of tribal disappearances, vanished explorers, and ritual killings dating back centuries. Someone, or something, had been keeping people away, deliberately. So who were the Keepers? Stories from indigenous tribes like the Ticuna and Watoto speak of a shadow clan, a group of guardians who lived apart from other tribes, speaking a forgotten language, only appearing when sacred ground was threatened. They wore jaguar skins, painted their faces white with river ash, and moved like ghosts through the trees. They were not warriors, but priests, and they were feared. One 19th century missionary wrote in his diary, "I was warned never to pass the river of smoke, that beyond it lived men who could speak to the wind, and that those who trespassed never returned." For Elias, this wasn't superstition, it was proof. In 1922, just 3 years before he vanished, Elias met with an elderly Watoto shaman named Tata Manuel. The meeting took place in secret, in the shadow of the Caco Cristalis. What the shaman told him changed everything. He spoke of an ancient civilization, not of gold, but of knowledge. A city built not just to shine, but to last forever. It was called Omagua, a name that loosely translates to the place where spirits rest. According to the shaman, Omagua wasn't destroyed, it was abandoned, sealed, protected by a vow older than memory. Only the Keepers knew the way in. Elias became obsessed with this. He scoured Jesuit archives in Bogota, Lima, and Quito, tracking down faded letters, travelers' notes, and confession records. Over and over, the same pattern emerged. Explorers who got too close vanished. Missionaries who ventured beyond a certain river turned back, terrified. A Portuguese cartographer in 1787 wrote of a stone eye in the jungle that watches all who pass. But then Elias made one final, chilling discovery. In a 1750 for Jesuit mission ledger, there was a mention of a spiral city in the region now known as Vops, and next to it, in the margins, just the Latin words, non licet, it is forbidden. Was Elias chasing a dream, or had he truly found something ancient, something meant to stay, hidden? Why would a map carry ceremonial warnings instead of coordinates? Why would the very tribes who spoke of El Dorado also tell stories of men who died just searching for it? Elias once wrote, "The greatest treasure in the world isn't gold. It's a secret so powerful, people would rather bury it than share it." And as we now know, Elias believed the secret lay beneath a city no longer made of stone, but swallowed by jungle, buried under soil, and guarded by myth. The deeper you go into the Amazon, the less you can trust your senses. Time stretches, sounds change, and sometimes the jungle itself feels alive. In his final known letter, Elias left one last warning. If we do not return, do not come looking. What waits beyond the river is not for the curious, it is for the chosen. What did he mean? Did Elias truly cross into the spiral valley? Did he encounter the Keepers? Did he find Omagua, the real El Dorado? Or did something stop him? Not a river, not a tribe, but a force he could never explain. In part 3, we follow Elias Munro's final footsteps and uncover the shocking modern discovery that could prove he was right all along. The city beneath the mist, Elias's last night. Sometimes the jungle gives you a glimpse, just once, then it disappears forever, and you spend the rest of your life wondering, did I really see it? Or did the forest play a trick on me? Elias Monroe's last campfire was made 17 miles from the Xingu tributary, deep inside what locals still call the Whispering Zone, a stretch of forest so quiet at night you can hear your heartbeat echo off the trees. We know this not from Elias himself, but from the other man in the expedition, Luis Ibarra, the Colombian guide no one ever talks about, because Luis was the only one who came back, barely, alive, half-starved and completely changed. Luis was found 6 months later, near Manaus, wandering barefoot, covered in mud, holding only a leather pouch. Inside, a bone pendant and a page from Elias's field journal. He spoke very little. Most of what he said didn't make sense. They opened the stone. It sank to the river. Monroe is inside it now. He was taken to a hospital where he eventually gave a full interview. The transcript was sealed until 1998, when a Freedom of Information request forced its release. What it contained was astonishing. According to Luis, they did find something. It began when Elias spotted unnatural stone formations, not ruins, but a pattern, like a spiral carved into the forest floor, almost too massive to notice at ground level. Then came the light, a faint glow rising from between the trees, only visible just before dawn. Not fire, not sunlight, but something else. Luis said it looked like white smoke bending in shapes. Elias called it resonant mist. They followed it uphill for 2 days. On the third night, they reached it. Luis described a clearing, 400 yards wide, surrounded by jagged stones that rose out of the earth like ribs. In the center, a platform, not made of wood dot, not clay, but glass like black stone, perfectly smooth and cold to the touch. Elias stepped forward. He took out the bone pendant the shaman had given him weeks before, and when he placed it on the stone, the ground vibrated. Luis said the mist turned solid, a wall of white forming shapes, almost like people. And then came the sound. He described it as a humming chant made of breath and thunder, a frequency he could feel in his bones. It was language, he said, but not one I'd ever heard. I didn't hear it in my ears. I heard it in my head. The keepers had arrived, but they weren't what he expected. He didn't see faces, just outlines, human forms wrapped in smoke and light, moving without walking. He claims they surrounded Elias, but didn't harm him. Instead, they spoke to him, not in English, not in Spanish, but in something Elias seemed to understand. And then, Elias turned to Luis. He smiled and said one final sentence. "They've been waiting for me." Then Elias walked forward, into the stone, and disappeared. Luis passed out. He woke up alone, on the edge of the spiral ridge, with Elias and the others gone. No footprints, no camp, no platform, just jungle, as if nothing had ever been there. Skeptics dismissed Luis's story as trauma-induced hallucination, but he held firm until his death. In 1971, Monroe is not dead. He said, he crossed over. So here's the question, was Luis lying? Or did Elias Monroe find something in the jungle so strange, so outside known science, that we simply don't have the tools to describe it? In 2003, a satellite scan of the Xingu region revealed something curious, a spiral-shaped clearing nearly 400 meters across, matching Luis's description. Perfectly inside it, elevated ridges, a natural soil color, and what appeared to be subsurface cavities, but no visible ruins, no glass stone, no platform, almost as if the jungle had covered it back up. The team behind the discovery was ordered to halt their study. Ecological reasons, they said, but insiders say it was something else. A private security firm had already reached the site and sealed it off. Why? What was there to protect or hide? And then there's the pendant, the one Luis carried out. It remained in a private vault in Bogota for decades, until it was finally analyzed in 2019. Carbon dating placed it at over 4,000 years old. But the carvings? They were microscopic, nanostructured etching, not possible to create with known ancient tools, as if someone, or something, had knowledge far beyond its time. What if the city Elias found wasn't ancient? What if it was timeless? What if El Dorado, or Magua, Zed, was never a city of gold, but a city of frequency, of resonance, of knowledge stored in stone? Maybe that's why he vanished. Maybe Elias didn't die. Maybe he stayed. Coming up in part 4, we look at the newest expedition into the spiral zone and the evidence caught on camera that may prove Monroe's lost city wasn't just real, it's waking up. The spiral awakens. The forbidden expedition, they called it a satellite anomaly, a glitch in the data, but what the image showed was a perfect spiral carved into the earth, in the exact region, Elias Munro vanished nearly a century earlier. It was 2003 when the satellite image first leaked. A former NASA contractor, Javier Moore, noticed something strange while analyzing deforestation patterns near the upper Xingu River. At first, he thought it was an error, but the more he enhanced the image, the clearer it became. A spiral 400 meters wide, with radial lines, and at the center, a dark, oval shape. It matched the exact shape described in Luis Ibarra's journal 78 years earlier. Moore shared his findings with Brazilian authorities, expecting celebration. Instead, he was told to delete the files. The region, he was informed, was now restricted for ecological research. But Javier wasn't alone. Dr. Eva Kruger, a German-American anthropologist and Amazon specialist, had been researching the Munro disappearance for over a decade. When she saw the leaked image, she made a decision. She was going in. In 2005, Dr. Kruger led an unauthorized expedition to the spiral zone. She took the guides, infrared drones, and a compact LiDAR scanner. For 5 weeks, they hacked their way through some of the densest, most remote jungle on Earth. And then, it appeared. The trees opened onto a wide clearing. The spiral was real, and at the center, a mound of jet black stone. Dr. Kruger described it as unnatural, cold to the touch, slightly reflective. But here's where it gets stranger. When they placed their equipment near the stone, the electronics began to fail. Their GPS scrambled, batteries drained, cameras glitched. Only one thing worked, a 1980s analog film camera, the kind with no digital components. And that's how they captured the most controversial photo in Amazonian archaeology. The photo shows 3 things: the stone mound, smooth, black, and ovular, a strange grid pattern across its surface, visible only under angled light, and hovering just above the stone, a slight distortion, like heat waves in the air, but centered, focused, almost watching. Experts called it a camera glitch, but physicists saw something different, an anomaly in the light field, a ripple in space. Within days of sharing her findings, Kruger's team was detained by Brazilian federal police. Her equipment was confiscated, her guides disappeared, and the spiral zone was declared off limits. Under a new environmental emergency protocol, Dr. Kruger returned to the U.S., discredited, blacklisted from official institutions. But she kept the photo, and in 2022, she published it in an open-source archive. It went viral, and once again, the legend of Zed was alive. Independent researchers and podcasters began digging, and they found something chilling. 2 months before Elias Munro vanished in 1925, local tribes stopped fishing the upper Xingu River. They called it the sleeping serpent. According to tribal elders, once every 100 years, the serpent awakens, not to strike, but to call. A voice of stone speaks, they said, and men follow. Elias Munro was one of those men. What if the spiral isn't just a marker? What if it's a beacon, a kind of frequency map, triggered only under certain cosmic conditions? The same way Stonehenge aligns with solstices, or the pyramids with Orion's belt. New research by theoretical physicist Dr. Malcolm Esteban suggests that the spiral has coordinates aligned with the path of Earth's magnetic pole reversal, a cycle that peaks every 12,000 years. Coincidence or timing? And what if Zed isn't dead? In 2023, a group of indigenous trackers working 40 miles from the spiral reported something unnerving. Footprints, but not theirs, large, booted prints leading into a ravine that had no known exit. And they found something else. A satchel, inside, a rusted compass, a leather-bound notebook, and a medallion. The inscription, EM190 for Elias Munro's initials. So here's the question. Was Elias Munro's city ever made of gold? Or was it built on something far more valuable? A living frequency, a message hidden in stone, a knowledge system waiting to be accessed, not by wealth, but by resonance. He called it Zed, but maybe it was never a city at all. Maybe it was a gate. Coming up in part 5, the shocking new discovery made just months ago, and the reason why one whistleblower says, we were never supposed to find El Dorado because El Dorado wasn't lost. It was sealed. The truth they tried to bury, El Dorado's real secret, they sealed it not with stone, but with silence. For almost 100 years, no major institution, no government, no university, no museum dared revisit the spiral zone until now. In April 2024, a leaked internal memo from a Brazilian geological agency confirmed what independent researchers had long suspected. Underground activity had been detected, not tectonic, not seismic, but rhythmic. Sensors near the upper Xingu River had picked up low-frequency pulses, evenly spaced, consistent, and repeating every 42 minutes. Dr. Carmen Alvarez, a seismologist in Sao Paulo, described them as not natural, not mechanical, something alive in the data, and that wasn't all. A thermal drone sent in by a private research firm revealed something buried under the spiral, something shaped like a dome. The structure beneath the spiral measured over 600 feet across. Initial scans suggested a hollow interior with walls lined in metallic sediment not native to the Amazon, and then came the part no one could explain. The dome was emitting low levels of radiation in a perfect Fibonacci spiral, mathematically precise, but not lethal, almost designed. On May 19th, 2024, a rogue group of scientists known as the Foundation for Hidden Histories breached the site. They brought no heavy machinery, no explosives, only ground-penetrating radar and a belief that Z was more than just ruins. They followed the pulses, and after 36 hours of quiet scanning, they found it, a tunnel, just 12 feet below the surface. The team documented their descent with headcams. Only 5 minutes in, the air pressure dropped dramatically. One member described the sensation as walking into a vacuum. Then they reached the chamber. It was oval-shaped, smooth, lined in slate-black material that didn't reflect light. It absorbed it. No carvings, no gold, no corpses. Only one object in the center, a sphere, exactly 1 meter in diameter, levitating. No strings, no supports, just floating, still and silent. When one researcher approached it, his headcam shorted out. When another extended a pole to touch it, he heard whispers in languages he didn't understand, and then silence. That was the last anyone heard from them. The team vanished. The footage leaked. 2 weeks later, the Brazilian government sealed off the region again, this time under military protection. And then came the message, a radio signal, transmitted once, intercepted by an amateur ham radio operator in Nevada. It said, Z is not a city, Z is a memory. Not from Earth, but left for Earth. In the weeks following the signal, data analysts and historians began reevaluating everything. Z was never meant to be found. It was meant to be activated. A seed of knowledge, a vault of memory, left by a people or something long before our history began. The ancients didn't worship gold. They shaped Earth into code. And that black sphere, it's made of a substance no one can replicate. Its atomic structure is non-crystalline, not metal, not stone. It responds to frequency, to voice, to intention. Some believe it's a message archive. Others say it's a navigation device. And a few, very few, believe it's a key. Elias Munro may not have died in the jungle. He may have crossed into something we don't yet have the words for. Because legends like El Dorado aren't just about treasure. They're about thresholds between what we know and what we dare to imagine. And now, we face the same question Munro once did. What would you risk to uncover the truth? Because maybe El Dorado never vanished. It was simply waiting for someone who could hear the signal and follow it.